Let's talk about what Donald Trump said at the White House on Monday, marking 1 year since his return to office, and why many of his claims are being challenged. In a wide-ranging address, first speaking to reporters and then taking questions in an extended Q&A, Trump tried to present a 1-year scorecard since his January 2025 inauguration. He repeatedly framed it as proof of progress, but threaded throughout his remarks were many of the false or misleading claims he has returned to again and again over the past year. That included incorrect economic statistics, misleading assertions about domestic and foreign affairs, a revived false claim about the 2020 presidential election, and a series of other factual inaccuracies. So what exactly did he say, and what do the numbers actually show? Let's dig in. Trump made a false claim about fuel costs.
But he didn't do it properly. He had people that didn't know what they were doing. Core inflation for the last 3 months is 1.6%.
But according to the American Automobile Association, the AAA, the national average gas price on Tuesday was about $2.82 per gallon. He then added that some places in the US have it for $1.99 a gallon.
And look at gasoline. They have places in the country now $1.99 a gallon. $1.99, $2.30, $2.50. I guess the average now they're saying is $2.31. I mean, he was at $4.50 and $5 for periods of time. And he went back to the Trump formula, but he didn't do it properly, and he really went back to parts of it because you would have had $8 gasoline if they didn't.
That needs context. On Tuesday, no US state had an average gas price below $2 per gallon based on AAA data. The lowest statewide average was roughly $2.31 per gallon, recorded in Oklahoma. Trump also claimed inflation was easing sharply, saying many of the groceries have come way down. Inflation, however, persists. The latest Consumer Price Index report shows average consumer prices in December were 2.7% higher than a year earlier and 0.3% higher than in November. Inflation did hit a 40-year high of 9.1% in June 2022 during the Biden administration. But that is still far below the all-time US inflation record of 23.7% set in 1920. And that 2022 spike happened more than 2 years before Trump returned to office. By Jan 2025, inflation had fallen to 3%, only slightly above the current 2.7% that Trump now characterizes as no inflation. Trump repeated his claim that agreements under his most favored nation policy would slash prescription drug prices by 300%, 400%, 500%, and even 600%.
But we secured most favored nations agreements to slash drug prices by as much as 300%, 400%, 500%, and even 600%, including with Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, Gilead Sciences, EMD, Serenio, and many others.
His administration has reached some limited agreements that resulted in the price reductions for a small subset of drugs. But the figures he cited are mathematically impossible. A possible 100% reduction would mean prices fall to zero. Reductions beyond that would imply that patients are being paid to take medication, which is just not the case. The president quoted a number of $18 trillion being invested in the United States because of his election, adding that the figure is probably more than that.
We would have had, welfare would have gone up, and instead of investing $18 trillion in our country, now it's probably more than that, but $18 trillion and having thousands of plants being built all over the country.
The number is not supported by evidence. As of Tuesday, the White House website listed major investment announcement at $9.6 trillion, a figure that itself has been criticized. A CNN review published in October found the administration included vague pledges, bilateral trade statements, and non-binding expressions of intent that do not count as actual investment commitments. Trump reiterated his claim that he delivered no tax on Social Security, a key promise from his 2024 campaign.
We signed one big, beautiful bill. I call it the Great Big Beautiful Bill, delivering the largest tax cuts in history. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. We made interest on car loans tax deductible for U.S.-built automobiles only. So if you buy an automobile built in the United States, we're not doing it for Germany and Canada and different places. We're doing it only if it's built here. We want them to be built here. A lot of the Canadian auto plants are closing and they're moving into the United States. Same thing with Mexico, same thing with Germany, and same thing with Japan and other countries. They're moving into the United States because of tariffs, because they don't want to pay the tariffs.
But while legislation signed in 2025 introduced a temporary additional tax deduction of up to $6,000 per year for individuals aged 65 and over, would reduce benefits for high earners, millions of Social Security recipients still pay taxes on their benefit. The deduction does not apply to recipients under 65 and is set to expire in 2028. Trump repeated a long-standing but unproven claim that many countries open up their prisons and drop them into the United States. He singled out Venezuela under former leader Nicolas Maduro, alleging it opened their prisons to the United States by sending prisoners as migrants.
Venezuela, as an example, opened their prisons into the United States. That's why one of the reasons I felt so strongly against Venezuela. Now I'm loving Venezuela. They've been working with us so well. It's been so nice. And an unbelievably nice woman also did a very incredible thing, as you know, a few days ago. We're talking to her, and maybe we can get her involved in some way. I'd love to be able to do that. Maria, maybe we can do that. But we're dealing with the people and the president and all of the people in Venezuela, and we've been doing great. The oil companies are getting ready to make massive investments there. They have more oil than...
Venezuela has seen a major immigration driven by economic hardship, violence, and political instability. But Trump and his administration have never once provided evidence that Venezuela emptied prisons or mental health institutions to send inmates to the US, despite repeated requests from journalists. Pressing his case for the Nobel Peace Prize again, Trump repeated his claim of ending unendable wars.
Ended 8 unendable wars in 10 months. These were unendable wars. Cambodia and Thailand fighting for years. Kosovo and Serbia. The Congo and Rwanda. Pakistan and India, they were really going at it. 8 planes shot down. They were going to go nuclear, in my opinion. The Prime Minister of Pakistan was here, and he said President Trump saved 10 million people and maybe much more than that. They're both nuclear countries. Israel and Iran. Egypt and Ethiopia were going to fight over a dam, and I got them to stop. I still got to work it out, because they put a dam up in Ethiopia that stops the flow from a little river called the Nile. I always think of the Nile being in Egypt, you know, beautiful Nile with the pyramids, but they put a dam up. You know who paid for the dam?
While he played roles in diplomatic efforts related to several conflicts, that figure is widely regarded as an exaggeration. Some of the items he cites were not wars at all. His list includes a dispute between Egypt and Ethiopia over a dam project, which is a diplomatic disagreement rather than an armed conflict. Another claimed war between Serbia and Kosovo did not occur during his presidency. Trump also cited a peace agreement between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, but fighting has continued and the agreement was never signed by the main rebel coalition. Similarly, clashes resumed between Thailand and Cambodia in December despite a peace deal brokered earlier in the year. And regardless of how one assesses Trump's roles in other conflicts, including Gaza, where violence continued after the October ceasefire, the claim that he ended 8 wars is greatly exaggerated. He also claimed that no US presidents have ever settled one war. While that may be true, US presidents have played decisive roles in ending multiple wars, including World War I and II and the Gulf War, and have brokered numerous peace agreements globally. Trump highlighted NATO members' agreements to raise defense-related spending to 5% of GDP by 2035, claiming members didn't pay 2% but now pay 5%.
Got NATO members to agree to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP from 2%, and they pay the 5% and they didn't pay the 2%. And by the way, I did more for NATO than any other person alive or dead. Nobody's done for NATO. And I think for the most part, they'll tell you that. I think you could ask the Secretary General about that, but he said it. I've done more for NATO than anybody, and I see all this stuff, but NATO has to treat us fairly too. The big fear I have with NATO is we spend tremendous amounts of money with NATO, And I know we'll come to their rescue, but I just really do question whether or not they'll come to ours.
Most NATO countries have not yet met even the 3.5% core defense spending target, and they have been given a decade to do so. NATO estimates show that only Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia reached or exceeded 3.5% in 2025. Trump once again falsely claimed that the 2020 presidential election was rigged, saying Joe Biden didn't win the election, and claiming new evidence has emerged.
The history of our country. A man that didn't win the election, by the way, it's a rigged election. Everybody knows that now. And by the way, numbers are coming out that show it even more plainly. We caught him. We caught him. So I just want you to know that it's a terrible thing.
He also exaggerated his polling lead over Biden over the former president's poor debate performance in mid-2024, claiming a 25-point advantage. Trump's claims about having caught Biden or possessing new proof are unfounded. And while Trump did lead in the polls after the debate, margins were generally in the single digits. Trump claimed NPR and PBS were sort of gone now after he signed a legislation cutting federal funding.
Signed legislation to cut all taxpayer funding to woke and biased NPR and PBS, and they're sort of gone now, I guess. I heard they closed up. They were terrible. They were so unfair. They were so terrible.
Both organizations continue to operate because federal funding made up only a portion of their budget. The Corporation of Public Broadcasting has voted to dissolve due to funding cuts, but that has not shut down NPR or PBS nationwide. Put together, this is the pattern. Big headline claims, repeated familiar talking points, and then the numbers underneath telling a different story. And when a president uses misleading figures on prices, investment, immigration, war, elections, and public health, it does more than confuse the record. It shapes what people believe is happening in the country right now.